I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to contact us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email thestory@kgw.com or call our phone number and leave a message. The number is 503-226-5090. We're coming to you from Beaverton because we're going to be talking about charter change, the change they've already made and the one that Portland is thinking about. And we're going to have an extended conversation with the mayor.
And how long have you been the mayor of Beaverton?
Like a year and a half.
How long's it felt?
20.
Lacey Beatty became Beaverton's mayor January 1st of 2021. It's the same day the city changed its form of government. For the last 30 years or more, Beaverton's had what's considered a strong mayor government. The mayor ran all the city departments, had a hand in the day-to-day operations, and did the major hiring. The mayor was also the political figure. The city council set policy and approved budgets, but did not have a say in personnel decisions. Now, Beaverton has a professional city manager who runs the day-to-day operations, and Mayor Beatty and 6 other council members set policy, but are not involved in running the city. Beatty is full-time, but the rest of the city council is part-time and have no staff. Even with this change, the mayor is not sure the current form of Beaverton's government is the best one possible.
Well, I was one of the few that didn't vote for the change. It was in the middle of my election that I was running. I think part of the problem that exists now is there's no one the buck stops with, right? As a member of the council, all 7 of us are trying to direct a city manager. Getting consensus on items is challenging. And you have an unelected person basically managing everything in the city. So it is a challenging form of government to kind of operate in. If you have a council that can't get along, this form of government would be really challenging. Luckily, we do have a good form of government, but right now we only have 6 of us because one of the members resigned. So the whole time we've been in this form of government, only for 2 months have we had 7 members.
6 is a bad number for a council because if 3 want to do something but the other 3 do not, it does not happen. For example, what if you wanted to ban fireworks from the city of Beaverton?
We had a large fight last year over fireworks, whether we would ban them or not ban them when the heat dome hit. Well, because we only had 6 members, 3 voted for, 3 voted against, it failed. Fireworks didn't pass. So we would have had to have a 4-2 vote in order to make that happen.
Beatty did not like that. She's a veteran and, like many, does not enjoy the sound of the 4th of July.
We strongly recommended people not do them, which was not what this veteran would have wanted or mayor. And we had a huge community outcry asking us to ban fireworks, not just because of the heat dome, but because of the environmental impacts, dogs, everything else. And that is a small thing, but a strong mayor could have banned fireworks. In this form of government, it takes 4 of the councilors to direct the city manager to do it.
Portland's current form of government is also under review, and voters will have a chance to decide if it should change. Currently, Portland has 4 elected city commissioners plus the mayor. Each one, including the mayor, are in charge of several large bureaus and hundreds of employees. Under a proposal by the Portland Charter Review Commission, that would change to a strong mayor in charge of a professional city manager who together would run the day-to-day operations of the city. The council would expand to 12 members and set policy, but not be involved in day-to-day operations. Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler told me the current system with elected officials running big departments is a bad idea.
The core problem, as I see it, is you are electing people to serve on a city council, but really what they are is managers of diverse, complicated, large business enterprises. And people who are elected to the Portland City Council may have never managed anything larger than a popsicle stand.
The result of elected officials in Portland running bureaus is they can do what they want. The mayor's only recourse is to take the bureaus away from the officials, but he cannot run them all himself. It's an obvious problem to Beaverton's mayor.
Well, I think it's that there's one person that's in charge of everything, and they're going to have their directors, but everyone reports up to one person. The way that the Portland Commission is designed now is they don't report to Ted. And so, at the end of the day, who's held accountable? And I think now it's the city manager will be held accountable. They'll have department heads running all of those divisions.
The other problem with Portland's separate bureaus and separate elected leaders is a ridiculous duplication of effort.
We have to consolidate our leadership. The silos are absolutely working against our ability to deliver the basic services that the public expects us to deliver. Just picking up the trash requires you to go through 7 different bureaus. as opposed to centralizing that service like any city would. And that's why you're seeing me pass executive directives that help me on an emergency basis to consolidate services.
Back to Beaverton's mayor, she said the new form of government is working, even though it takes a long time to make things happen. And she's not about to miss a chance to promote her city.
I think what's going great is like Beaverton is the place to be. We have a 2% commercial vacancy rate. People want to come and do business here. They want to open up their restaurants. We opened tons of restaurants during the pandemic.
Nice chatting with Beaverton's mayor. Thank you for your time, Miss Mayor. We'll keep bringing you updates on Portland's charter change, by the way, because changing a form of government, kind of a big deal. And we want you to have the latest updates. The process is underway now. The commission made its first recommendation, and now the plan is out for a series of public hearings. In the fall, there will be a final recommendation. Then Portland voters will decide whether to change things in November. So there's still lots of time to learn all about it. While we're talking about Portland and its government, I'd like to take a brief moment to take note of something that Mayor Ted Wheeler did yesterday. I and others have been critical that he's not spoken out more publicly after some of the worst incidents of violence in our city this year. But yesterday he did. He put out a video about the 4 teenagers who were shot over the weekend. One died.
Last night, 4 teenagers were shot in Southeast Portland. 3 young men had their lives changed forever, and 1 young man will never have the chance to start his adult life.
That shooting was awful, and I feel horrible for the young men and the families involved, and for the community in Southeast, which has had far too many shootings over the last year and 4 months. In my opinion, the reason it's important for the mayor and police chief and others to speak out after something like that is to let the world know that it's a big deal and it is outside the norm of what we expect for our city. They need to say it's unacceptable, and they need to ask for tips from the community, and they need to tell us what's being done to try and stop the violence. And it's okay if they say it again and again and again, because not saying it means they've given up, that the shootings and murders are normal for Portland and the greater metro area, and they're not. According to the Oregonian newspaper, just 9 years ago, a total of 16 people were murdered in Portland. That was terrible, but it's nothing like it is now. That was a 42-year low. It does show what's possible, though. I know our city and region always growing, and some problems are harder than they used to be. But we cannot get used to the shooting and the violence and the death. We have to remain outraged, and we have to demand more action to bring the violence under control. And we need to hear from our political and law enforcement leaders to know that they are concerned and focused and refusing to accept that this is just the way it's gonna be. That's my opinion. What's yours? Send me an email at thestory@kgw.com or leave a voicemail at 503-226-5090. Now let's get to our big story, and it starts with some excited passengers on a Delta flight.
That the Transportation Security Administration will no longer enforce the federal mandate requiring masks in all U.S. airports and on-board aircraft.
Lots of people taking their masks off there. It's the end of the mask mandate, at least for now, on public transportation. This does not mean it's the end of the pandemic. We'll get to that in a moment. But as of right now, if you don't want to, you don't have to wear your mask on a plane, a train, an automobile. It's because a federal judge in Florida struck down the mask mandate. Not the CDC, not a doctor. A 35-year-old judge appointed by the Trump administration and confirmed even though she was deemed not qualified by the American Bar Association. The group found that she had about 5 years experience practicing law when they say 12 is the minimum that they recommend. They did note she has a keen intellect, though. Here's what happened. First, the CDC announced that it was going to extend the mandate for public transportation until May 3rd. Then the judge, Catherine Kimball Mizell, said the CDC was relying on a law from 1944 called the Public Health Service Act, and that the government claimed masks are in place for sanitation. But Judge Kimball Mizell said the masks don't sanitize and that the CDC exceeded its legal authority. That was in response to a lawsuit brought by a conservative legal group called the Health Freedom Defense Fund. The Biden administration said the Justice Department will appeal the ruling depending on what the CDC recommends, so things could still change. But for now, the mask mandate will not be in effect. You can take your mask off now at the airport, including PDX, and on all major airlines. Also TriMet, C-Tran, and the Portland streetcar, and Amtrak train and Greyhound buses, and Uber and Lyfts. Of course, you can choose to keep wearing your mask in those places too if you want to, if you feel better doing so, and all the agencies we talked with are actually encouraging passengers to be understanding towards people who do want to continue to wear a mask. One place you'll still need to wear a mask is your doctor's office or the hospital. The mask mandate for healthcare settings has not been lifted. The Multnomah County health officials are also encouraging people to continue to wear a mask despite the judge's ruling. Multnomah County Public Health Director Jessica Guernsey sent out a statement saying that she encourages everyone to continue wearing high-quality masks on public transportation to protect themselves and people who are unvaccinated or those who spend time with people who are unvaccinated, including children. She went on to say masking on public transit is a small effort with potentially large yield in protecting our community. And let's take a look at where we stand with the pandemic. It wasn't too long ago that mask mandates were lifted in Oregon and Washington, and cases kind of started to creep up again. I talked today with Peter Graven from OHSU. He's the one who's done the COVID case forecast for Oregon throughout the pandemic. He's trying to predict how high cases will get.
The data is showing some increases in cases. That's across the state, with probably a little bit more increase going on in the Portland metro area. And that was largely expected. So we were seeing cases and hospitalizations go up a little bit in Europe. Actually, the case counts got pretty high in Europe. Then we started seeing in the northeast of the U.S., the states there, New York, Vermont, all through the northeast, started seeing increases, and now we're seeing that here. We do think that has been largely due to the BA2 variant of Omicron, as well as the slightly faster growth in some of our areas in the city where they had previously higher masking rates. And so we know so it is potentially the case that as masking mandates went away, that there was some increase in infection that happened from that. However, it's been largely manageable in the terms of the number of people hospitalized. So even though cases have gone up in some of these places, that we aren't seeing the hospitalizations that come with.
Graven says we have a lot of immunity built up in the population right now between vaccines and boosters and previous infections. There just aren't that many people left who haven't had some kind of exposure to COVID. So even though it's still out there and it's still highly transmissible, hospitals are just not seeing the same severity that we had last summer during the Delta wave. But he cautions COVID is not yet done with us, and masks were helping to slow it down.
The data is showing some increases in cases. That's across the state, with probably a little bit more increase going on in the Portland metro area. And that was largely expected. So we were seeing cases and hospitalizations go up a little bit in Europe. Actually, the case counts got pretty high in Europe. Then we started seeing in the northeast of the U.S., the states there, New York, Vermont, all through the northeast, started seeing increases, and now we're seeing that here. We do think that has been largely due to the BA2 variant of Omicron, as well as the slightly faster growth in some of our areas in the city where they had previously higher masking rates. And so we know so it is.
It's not your memory. That was accidentally the same comment again. So you got it twice. One thing to note before we finish up, if you were banned from an airline for being unruly over the mask mandates, things have not changed for you. If you started fights with flight attendants or other passengers, most airlines say you are still banned. President Biden is visiting Portland this Thursday. It will be his first visit to the Rose City as Commander-in-Chief. It'll also be the first time a president visits the city since the Obama administration. Biden is expected to speak about infrastructure investments, which could include the I-5 bridge replacement project. The White House has not released specifics about where the president will travel, but we will certainly be covering it. We're not sure if we're going to have a chance to ask the president any questions. We should be able to. We hope to. And if we do, I want to make sure we're representing you. Let me know what you want us to ask. What's maybe the one big question or big issue in Portland or Oregon or Southwest Washington that you want the president to talk about, maybe even fix, or at least acknowledge? Maybe it's something with the economy or the environment, whatever. All things are open. We won't read them all in the air, but send them to us, and we'll try and get those questions in. You can send them to thestory@kgw.com or leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Still ahead, one of the best things about living in the Pacific Northwest is the view of the mountain glaciers. They are gorgeous. But unfortunately, because of climate change, they are also shrinking. Scientists say it's happening faster than they thought.
That surprised me as well. I mean, I knew they'd be shrinking, right? But I didn't think they'd be disappearing like that.
When the story continues. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com or give us a call. Leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We really do want it to be a dialogue. Let us know what you're thinking about. We'll respond. Climate change is sometimes hard to wrap your head around because the signs of it happening aren't always visible. But here's something you probably will notice over the next few decades. The glaciers on our mountains are shrinking, and in some cases, they're just disappearing altogether. That's what a Portland State researcher says will happen to Washington's Olympic Peninsula by the year 2070. Meteorologist Joe Ranieri spoke with him today.
The glaciers that cover parts of the Olympic Mountains can take your breath away just by their beauty alone. But that beauty is slowly disappearing right before our eyes.
With the warmer summers and the warmer winters, those glaciers, the future doesn't look good.
Andrew Fountain is a professor of geology and geography at Portland State University who is behind the research. He says by 2070, these glaciers that are so critical to our ecosystem will be pretty much gone. He even admitted he was a little surprised how quickly the glaciers are fading away.
That surprised me as well. I mean, I knew they'd be shrinking, right? But I didn't think they'd be disappearing like that.
There's a reason why his team of researchers are expecting to see them disappear so quickly.
Those glaciers on the Olympics are the most vulnerable because they're the lowest elevation and closest to the ocean. So if anybody's going to go quickly, it's those guys.
They stand about 5,000 to 6,000 feet, much lower than the high peaks in the Cascades that can stretch more than 14,000 feet high. Just take a look at some of the evidence over the last 100 years in the Olympics. On the left is Lillian Glacier in 1905, lots of ice and snow. On the right is 2010, very little is left. Anderson Glacier 1936, Anderson Glacier 2015. Any evidence of a glacier there is pretty much gone. Fountain says it's not just warming temperatures we're experiencing that plays a role. Our winters are playing a big part too.
The winters arrive later and they disappear sooner, so we have thinner snowpacks. And thinner snowpacks aren't very good for glaciers.
Right now, there are about 250 glaciers in the Olympic Mountains. Fountain says if we make changes now, there could be some hope.
If we back off a little bit, the glaciers will last a little bit longer. Shoot, maybe to 2100, but we have to really reduce carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases.
Even though they are melting at a fast rate, he doesn't expect it to be all bedrock in the next 50 years.
And then they get extra snow accumulation through avalanching. So in reality, they'll probably hang on there much longer than we would predict. But they'll be tiny compared to what they are now.
But the deep and thick glaciers we're seeing today,
shrinking snowpacks, retreating glaciers, it's all kind of a consistent story, consistently sad story,
are going to be looking a lot different by tomorrow.
Super interesting. Let's check in now with meteorologist Joe Ranieri. Joe, you just talked about the Olympics in Washington State, but what about the glaciers on Mount Hood?
Well, Pat, there's about 11 glaciers on Mount Hood. And Fountain said glaciers are melting across the Northwest. That's no big surprise, right? But he told me Mount Hood is doing what he described as okay, but not great. That doesn't mean they're not seeing melting, though. But he said Mount Hood is doing okay because there is a lot of rock cover underneath the ice, and that rock actually helps keep the ice and snow cold, and that rock also insulates the surface of the ice, which in turn reduces some of the melting.
All right, thank you, Joe. Always great stuff from you. When the story continues, what an Oregon governor candidate from Medford says she would do to put a stop to Portland's gun violence epidemic. Oregon's gubernatorial primary election day is less than a month away. We're still getting to know the candidates who are running for governor. Tonight we have more from Republican Jessica Gomez. She's from Medford and recently met our threshold for profiling candidates for governor. We want them to have raised at least $500,000 and have an active campaign. Recently, I had a chance to ask her how she would deal with the violence that's out of control in cities like Portland.
You have to properly fund our police officers and law enforcement and make sure that they have the resources that they need to be effective. The other part is we have to start prosecuting for property crime and making sure that you've got a city that's clean, that people have pride in, and where that behavior is really unacceptable. You've got to start there. It's really, really critical. And once we can do that, companies and businesses and these downtown restaurants will start reinvesting in our areas like downtown Portland, where some of these things are really raging out of control.
There's been a very progressive movement amongst some of the district attorneys to not prosecute so much. As governor, I don't know that you could change that. They're each elected.
Yeah, we have to change the culture around this. This is about really speaking to Oregonians. I don't think anyone wants to live in an environment where they don't feel safe. It's really important, and we expect that our elected officials are really going to help toe the line for us and really do the necessary work, right? It's not about overly prosecuting someone who shouldn't be prosecuted. It's really about enforcing the laws that we have so that we can have a growing and thriving community.
That was Jessica Gomez, Republican from Medford. We've posted the raw interviews of all the governor candidates that we've interviewed on our KGW YouTube page. You should check them out. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We'll finish up right after this. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to Native Action Network. It's a nonprofit based in Seattle that helps Native American women get involved in politics and run for office at the local, state, and national levels. If you want to donate, just hold up your phone's camera right now to that QR code that's there on your screen, or you can go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how small or how big. That's the end of our show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. Remember, the story, our story, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6.